right. Man, I am so excited to be here with you tonight, and not just because, like everything, this is awesome. There's been no better time to be a New Yorker. I have had so many people that have never said hi to me, and now they are. This is a great time. But tonight's a special time because we're starting a brand new series. We had spent a lot of time going through the book of Galatians, and over the summer, what we're going to be doing is spending some time looking at some of the parables that Jesus has taught in the Bible. You might have been familiar with these because a lot of these stories, these lessons that Jesus has given us are stories that have gone in so many different places in life, things that have been in media and other places, and what we're going to be doing is taking some time to really explore and understand exactly the deeper meaning of what Jesus is teaching us. So as Josie mentioned, there's a spot that you're able to follow along with those notes just so that you're able to really be able to see exactly what we're reading. But we're going to just jump right into this today, and we're going to be looking at one of the very first parables that Jesus ever gives us. So you'll see, if you're trying to find this in your own Bible, this is Matthew chapter 13, and this is where Jesus first ever even shares what a parable is. And it's kind of this really advanced level analogy that's giving a lot of truth. So these verses, we're going to be reading Matthew 13, 3 through 9. And it says this: "He told many stories in the form of parables, such as this one. Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seeds. As he scattered them across his field, some seeds fell on a footpath, and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. These seeds sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow. But the plants soon wilted under the hot sun, and since they didn't have deep roots, they died. Other seeds fell among the thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil, and they produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand." And if you hear that and you wonder, I don't understand, that is exactly how everybody felt in that exact moment when Jesus shared that parable for the first time. Because they were all of a sudden like, what is this? What do you mean there were seeds that fell on these paths? And what do you mean birds and rocks? And what are you getting at? And the Bible actually tells us this. And let me just give you a little bit of grace for a second. If you've ever read the Bible and you felt for a second like, I don't understand what's going on, the very first people that Jesus called to literally be with him 24/7 were wildly confused all the time. So if I can just give you some hope for a second. Following Jesus means you're going to be confused quite a bit, okay? That's just kind of what happens with this situation. But in this parable, Jesus gives us a little bit of a framework because what we see later on in this is he actually goes back and he explains this. And let me just give you the quick part of this, because he explains the seed and the soil. He explains what these two things are. The seed, he says later, this is about the message of the kingdom of heaven. And if you were like me and you even grew up in church and you're like, what are you talking about? What is this? Let me just give you a really good refresher on what is the kingdom of heaven. What was this message Jesus was actually trying to preach? We've heard probably different words for this, different word choices. You might have heard this called the gospel, the good news, that thing that your grandma yells about all the time and gives out little cards about, okay? This is a really important message. This message being this, that God created everything. He created humanity. He created us, and he created us in such a way that we would have this perfect relationship with other people. We'd have a perfect relationship with ourselves. We'd have a perfect relationship with God. We'd have a perfect relationship in the very work and everything that we were supposed to do. But then we were convinced to go a different route in which we chose to invite sin in and break this relationship with God. And because of that, now each one of those different dynamics I just mentioned, we all deal with. I mean, think about your relationship with yourself for a second. Did you know there was the original intent in which God created you was that you weren't supposed to be saying awful things to yourself all the time? That's because of sin. You know the conflict that you feel, those people you still avoid because you're mad about? That's because of sin. You know that tension you feel with your relationship with God? It's all of this messed up problem of sin in our lives. And the message Jesus is trying to give in the kingdom of heaven is, I am now resetting things. There was once a time whenever we had no hope, there was nowhere to go, but now because of what Jesus is doing, and the fact that he came, giving his life, dying on a cross, and coming back to life 3 days later, making this new pathway available for us to be able to be in this spot where we live in the now and not yet, meaning this. We live in the right now, we get to experience some of this stuff, but we don't get to experience all of it yet, because on the other side of eternity, we're going to see the fullness of what God creates, of what God redeems to a spot where, once again, we won't have to live in the brokenness of all these problems, the brokenness of relationships, the damage of sin. That's what the seed was in this analogy. It's talking about this amazing message. And then there's the soil. The soil meaning our hearts. And here's the difficult part. And this message might be really offensive, so just roll with me and don't leave until the end, okay? Because I promise we'll turn it around. Here's the main point of this message. The problem isn't with the seed, it's with the soil. It's not with what Jesus has to say, it's with my heart. The problem in this story and the problem that we deal with so much of the time is with the soil in our lives. And if we're logical on this and we have to play this out, this is the questions that we have to, if you're like me, there's at least some point where I have to start asking questions and go, if what Jesus really said, if this message is true, why doesn't everybody believe in it? Why is it that we've got conflicting ideas? Why is it that these people believe in this and these people believe in that? And everybody's kind of on the fence on, is this really the right way? Is that, I'm just being honest. Even as a pastor, these are questions that we have to ask that are these really big existential ones. And even more than that, it's a little bit of an offensive one to say, well, why is the message wrong? And why didn't Jesus just market it better? You know, why didn't he have a better team that really helped him put this together? Because you would think maybe if this was the truth and this was the best message, why is it that I can't really hear it? Why is it that I can't really receive it well? Can I propose to you something that is going to hurt but is really important we have to understand? As human beings, we are not good whenever it comes to being receptive. And I'm not saying this out of my own opinion. There was a study done in which 96% of people felt that they were really good listeners. And we all know whatever study that was wrong, okay? How many times have you been in a conversation with somebody and you realized halfway through, they're not even paying attention? Their eyes start to glaze off and you start saying wild things just to see if they're listening? What's funny is even whenever they do studies with people to see how good of a listener they are, typically people can only retain about 50% of the conversation that you can actually have with somebody. That's a good statistic. You can use that on some family members whenever you say, I don't remember, okay? You should really only treat me about 50% that I should have to remember. That's fair. But even more than that, whenever we're talking about being receptive, we're not talking about something that has to do with intelligence here. I'm not calling any of you dumb or anything wrong. What I'm saying is when it comes down to our personality, how we are, what we've learned, what we've been conditioned to, we're not always the easiest to be receptive. Especially right now, whenever we're in a city, we're in a world when it feels like everybody wants me to be receptive of everything. Can I tell you the worst experience I ever had in my own neighborhood? I remember I was leaving the grocery store, and I was so excited because I had just gotten this new soda, and I was so excited. And I'm walking back, and then there was a guy on the corner at one of those tables, and I couldn't walk fast enough, okay? Because you know when that kicks in, and you're like, and the guy walked up to me, and he said, you look like you're a nice person, and I'm like, I try to look like a nice person. This is bad. I do try to look, and he's like, well, and I'm like, I'm trying so nicely, and I said to him, I'm like, well, you know what, I really have to go right now. I have a meeting that I got to get to, and that meeting was a new show on Netflix that I really needed to see, and I was delaying it for so long, I was late, okay? And as I said to him, I'm really sorry, I have to walk, and as I am in the crosswalk, this man yells out to me, so I guess you don't care about dogs, huh? I don't, so that was his own fault. No, but I'm like, why would you say that to me? As if that's just me walking past. I didn't know it was what are you even trying? And I had to fight the urge. I just kept walking. But we all have voices like this that are yelling at us all the time, trying to get us to feel, care, think about something. And because we have so many voices that are constantly trying to get our attention, what we've actually found is what gains to be the most receptive things in our minds are the things that are the most intense. Like, I've had conversations with people about this. They only believe things that they have had really deep feeling, spiritual environments with. And unfortunately, a lot of those moments happen when they are on some type of illegal substance, okay? But for them, that's where beliefs come from. That's where a lot of our most intense things come from. And if you're like me, there's moments whenever we have these really intense moments and we're like, does this mean I'm supposed to feel, think, or do something now because of this? The harder part is when it comes down to us being receptive is the reality that you have a choice. You actually have the reality to be able to hear something and choose not to actually listen to it. Like your brain, we all know this because this happened to us for most of school. We were able to have words that were going into our ears that never resonated, okay? That we never took in. That somebody would ask us, what does that mean? You'd be like, I don't know, I heard a bunch of words. Even more than that, you and I have the ability to see things that are very real, that are undeniable, and we still have the choice to be able to say, I'm not going to believe. And this is why, whenever it comes down to Jesus, he still gives us a choice. He still gives us the ability to be able to choose him and to decide whether or not we're actually going to follow him, whether or not we're going to be in the spot. And if I can just be honest, and I'm going to say something that's going to make you really question whether or not I should be a pastor. Because a few years ago, I was in a spot, and I remember there was a mentor of mine that was telling me, Colin, you realize if you never did anything for God in your entire life, if you never actually decided to help anybody out, if you never chose to do something for somebody else, and you just chose, I'm just going to live my own life, I'm going to do all this, you know God would just be so proud of you still. God would still love you. He would still care about you. He would still want to be there with you. He would not give up on you. He would still have just as much love, even if you decided to do the greatest thing in the world or do the worst stuff in the world. If you just decided you want to do, God's still going to choose to love you. So do you think maybe you could take the pressure off yourself, Colin? And I remember in that moment thinking to myself, no, of course I can't. Wow, what are you talking about? This is how I understand how to live life. And I remember hearing this and thinking to myself, so you mean that it's not about anything that I do, it's all about God? You mean that thing we just talked about, the seed, the kingdom of heaven? What Jesus, in the fact that he came to give everything for us, knowing that we didn't have to do anything. He wanted to give us love. He wanted to give us care. He wanted to be there for us. I had such a hard time accepting that. Can I tell you how many different ways that I have shared the gospel and I still was in a spot where I was like, I don't know if I can trust this. I don't know if I can believe this because I don't know if I can receive this. My ability to receive, to be receptive towards things just felt broken. And in this parable, that's what Jesus is teaching us. And we're going to look through these 4 different types of soil that he mentions. And what we're going to do is we're going to really figure out, okay, so if the problem is in the seed, it's in the soil. What is it in the soil that's the problem? And there's some parables that we have to leave up to interpretation. Thankfully, not this one. Thankfully, Jesus, whenever he finished teaching, brought his disciples, his closest followers together, and shared with them this message, which is what we're going to do together. I want to talk to you about the first soil, and I'm not going to read to you my interpretation. I'm going to read to you what Jesus says. Matthew 13:19, this is again later on, it says, the seed that fell on the footpath represents those who hear the message about the kingdom and don't understand it. The evil one comes and snatches away the seed that was planted in their hearts. Let me tell you what this seed looks like. Let me give you a very practical one because I can tell you I have now been doing ministry long enough that I've seen this one. This is moments that I've had where I've sat with people. And I've sat with them not far away. I've even sat with them in this building, sharing with them the gospel, sharing with them this amazing thing that, you know what, with Jesus, we get ultimate validation. While you and I will try to do every other path, we will try to sleep with as many people as we can. We will try to get as many likes and followers as we can, as we will try to accumulate as much money, and none of it actually gives us the validation we need in our heart. Jesus is able to give us so much that I can finally just be satisfied and breathe. And I've watched as I've shared that with people, and they go, wow, that sounds real. I wonder if I could accept that. I wonder if I could be there. And then they walk out these doors, and it's like something just comes and grabs it and takes it out of their life, and they just walk out of there. A message that could have been received by them that they chose and said, I just don't really know if I need to do it. And here's the reality on this, exactly what Jesus had talked about, saying that there would be something that would come and snatch away. What he's really talking about is the devil, is talking about the real enemy that we have. But here's what he's really talking about in this soil. It's that every human heart can have areas that are unprotected. Areas where we might receive something, we might hear something, whether or not you're following God, whether or not this is the essence of the gospel, or whether or not it's something specific God has told you to do. There are so many aspects of our heart that can remain unprotected. And I can be honest on this, because I've never really talked about this before. We have a very real enemy that exists that comes and tries to be able to take away different things from you. But let me give you kind of the sober mindset idea with this. This is a quote from C.S. Lewis where he talks about, as Christians, how we are supposed to approach things like demons, demonic activity, because as much as you and I would want to avoid it, I pass the same signs as you where I see psychic readings, only $15. I'm like, man, that would be really great to know what's next for only $15. Wouldn't that be great? I can tell you it's a scam, okay? But here's what he says about this. It says, there are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. He's talking about there's two ideas, two paths we can take in trying to understand things about demons, about the devil. It says one is to disbelieve in their existence. One is to say there is nothing that goes on. There are no demons, there's no devil, there's no nothing. There's nothing that happens there, okay? The other is to believe and feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. Have you met these people? That every time something goes wrong, anytime they get offended, that was a demon. And they got names for them too. And I'm like, no, you just aren't disciplined, okay? And it says this, they themselves are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with the same delight. Meaning this, we don't need to go all the way and say there's no enemy, there's no nothing, that's just you, it's just all materials, there's nothing spiritual happening. I think at some point or another you will be caught by the reality that there is something more than you in the world. We're not going to go to the other extreme either where we're going to say, and that means everything's a demon and everything's a problem. The reality is this, though. When God speaks, there's going to be someone who comes and tries to take that away from you. The reality is that there is someone that does not want you to receive and be able to be receptive to what God is trying to say. And that's what Jesus is teaching us here right now. He's teaching us in this spot. So what would it look like if whenever God did speak something to us that was encouraging, we would say, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to pray about that. I'm going to make sure that I hold on to that instead of letting that just kind of serve as a memory when I'm like, yeah, I remember I felt something encouraging when I was somewhere. No, when God would give us something, when he would give us a seed, we wouldn't just allow it to be snatched away. It would mean some of the dreams that you've had in your life, things that may or may not even be here in this church, dreams that you've had one day to be able to start a family and to be able to create a healthy lifestyle that you might not have ever seen before, but that you knew that God put that dream inside of you. But as you kept getting older, it felt like life was just knocking things out of you, as if there was someone intentionally working against you, taking every bit of encouragement and problem out of your life. It would mean that we would protect and hold on to those dreams. That we would say to ourselves, when God speaks, I will listen, I will receive, I will hold onto it. I'm not just going to walk away from this because, again, remember, the seed itself is such a beautiful, strong, amazing thing that God gives us. The problem, again, is on the soil. So we have to evaluate for ourselves, are there parts of my heart that I allow to be a little bit more unprotected? That I'm just allowing anybody to come in and say whatever they want and believe and think, and I'm just taking it. If we continue on, that second soil that was mentioned, talked about the rocky soil. Jesus in Matthew 13, 20 and 21 says this, the seed on the rocky soil represents those who hear the message and immediately receive it with joy. But since they don't have deep roots, they don't last long. They fall away as soon as they have problems or are persecuted for believing God's word. This is a scenario that is incredibly heartbreaking for me. This is one that I think I've seen the most, is the rocky soil. This is the people that in one moment they come into church, they experience such joy. They have these moments where they are laughing, they're crying, they're experiencing something beautiful. And if you talk to them 2 years later, they'll look back and say, I just had an emotional experience at church. None of that was real. It's as if the seed lands on some shallow soil for them. It's as if for some of us, whenever I've seen them, they've been at moments where they're just brought to tears at the reality of what God's doing in their lives. But then years later, they get to a spot where they're deconstructing all of it and they're saying none of this really was there, none of it was real, none of it was strong, none of it was powerful. I've had moments with dear friends that we have been over another continent together where we would literally pray for people and we would see God's miracles take place. And yet they'd come back and say, none of it was real. God, it's not somebody I want to follow. They walk away from the whole thing because the seed lands on something shallow. What prevents deep roots? Whenever we talk about rocks, it's the reality of this, that every heart has rocks that prevent depth. Every heart has rocks in it that would prevent us from being able to experience depth. We all have it. I have these things too. Can I talk to you about a few? And I want to just go very slowly on this so that we don't rush past this. Some of the rocks that exist, one of the biggest ones is unresolved trauma in our lives. Things that we have been through that we push down and say, I don't need to deal with this. I just need to get away from this, and I just need to move past it. And I just want to, it stays in our hearts to act as if these things just, because it happened in my past, it's not going to affect me now. What we find out, and what you might find out if you've gone to therapy, is that some of the things that drive you to do so much of what you do come down to your own trauma, come down to your own experiences, and come down to situations in which, hear me, God never designed you to have to go through in the first place. God never wanted you to have to go through in the first place. I don't know, and hear me, I know God can take those situations and work them for good, but hear me on it, that's not plan A, that's plan B. Plan A was that you never had to go through it in the first place. Plan A was that trauma was never a part of your life. And when we're talking about trauma, I want to be sensitive to whatever situations you might have gone through. Because there's a variety of situations in which people might have taken advantage of you, parents might not have been present for you, coaches and teachers might have spoke and belittled you, down to the point where some people might have completely hurt you in your body, your emotions, down to what it feels like in your very spirit. I don't want to just rush past it and go like, yeah, like some of us have trauma. No. Some of us have some very, very deep things that we've never worked past. And whenever we don't work past those things, whenever we don't actually even allow God into those things, we'll never really be able to grow past them. Let alone, again, to remind you, even in this good news, it's not just that we have a relationship with God. He restores and wants to holistically restore everything. So in those relationships we talked about, my own trauma becomes something that prevents me from having a good relationship with myself. Because you wonder, why can't I speak good about myself? Well, because whenever you think back to your trauma, you keep saying to yourself, I was so stupid to put myself in that spot. And whenever you allow God into that position, whenever you allow God to come in and speak to those situations, he's going to tell you, I don't think you're an idiot. I never called you stupid. I called you my son and my daughter. I wanted to bring you back. Whenever we allow God into that, it changes how we even view other people. Because you might have wondered, why is it that I can only get to this certain place in a relationship with somebody? See, it's funny because whenever some of you know, I'm about to get married in a month, and I'm very excited. Don't cheer on that. Okay, here's the thing. I'm trying to stay serious with this. Prior to being even in that relationship, I would joke and say, like, oh, you know what? Like, my longest relationship was only about 2.5 months. And I used to say that as like, because when I know. No, I was an idiot, okay? I had stuff that I never dealt with. I had stuff, hear me on this, that if I never would have been vulnerable with other people, if I never would have been vulnerable with God, I would have never been able to have not just a romantic relationship, but any other type of real, authentic, vulnerable relationship in which anybody else sees me. Because I'm saying to myself, I can hide here, I can deal with this. You're not meant, and your heart is not meant to carry that much trauma. And as much as we want to look at it and we want to say, well, God, why would you allow me to go through those things? Listen, the reality is this. The only person that can heal you of that trauma is the same person you're probably mad at. Because if we want to talk about the other giant thing that creates rocks in our hearts, it's bitterness. Man, can I just tell you, as human beings, we are professionals at being offended. My goodness. I have people I've never met that I'm offended at, okay? I have people that have no idea I exist, and I'm already offended at them. I have politicians I'm offended by, okay? I have people that messed up some of my favorite movies that I'm offended by, okay? I have people for silly things that I'm just offended by. I'm a pro at it, okay? I know you think that you're good at it. I might be better, okay? But I can tell you this. That level of offense, those things, they create so much bitterness. They create so many problems that in our lives, the joke that a lot of the pastorism we're supposed to throw on this is that offense is literally a fence. It's something that creates a barrier. It blocks my vision. blocks my ability to be able to connect, blocks everything down to the point where if God says something to me, he's got to literally bust through my offense in order for me to be able to hear it, in order for me to be able to receive it, in order for me to be able to believe that it's true, rather than me being able to say, I can't hold offense. You weren't designed for it. We weren't designed for it. We were not meant to be people that were holding on to so much bitterness, so much rage. And what I'm not telling you to do is deny reality and to just say, forget that it all happened, forget that. There's a difference between setting up boundaries and being able to say, I'm releasing all the intensity of the offense, which is what we have to do so much of the time, because when we don't do that, God might say something to you, but because of your own offense, you might not ever be able to receive it, which is a scary thought to think, that God's saying something to me, but I'm not hearing it. And there's a third type of soil that's mentioned. Matthew 13:22, Jesus is describing this one about the thorns in the soil. It says this, the seed that fell among the thorns represents those who hear God's word, but all too quickly the message is crowded out by the worries of this life and the lure of wealth, so no fruit is produced. I love how whenever he's talking about these soils, it goes really, really deep. And I mean this literally, if it talks about soil that just landed on a path and then birds came and ate it. And then it talks about soil that gets a little bit deeper, but then because of the rocks, it can't get there. And then it talks about this one where there's actually something that grows, but then there's something else that grows with it. It's because he's trying to teach us with the soil, that the thorns in the soil, that every heart has thorns in the soil that prevent growth. What are thorns in the soil? Thorns are things that look good, that we might call good, that we might act like are good, but actually are things that hurt us. The meaning is this: there's things that exist as part of your personality that you've said for the longest time, this is just me, and they're thorns. Let me tell you about a few, okay? Let me tell you about one that was mine. Anxiety was a big one for me. You couldn't separate anxiety from me, because I looked at it and I said, no, but that's the way God made me. God made me to be really stressed. God made me to have the tightest shoulders in the world. God made me to have anxiety attacks. That's how he made me. And I couldn't separate the fact that that's not how God actually wanted me to be. But because this other root that went really deep grew up with what I was building and who I was, I couldn't see the difference. Can I tell you another one? There's some of us that are in spots where we'll say, like, I am that honest person. When you need somebody to say it, I'm the one that I'll say it how it is. And really, God didn't design you to break people down. He didn't design you to be somebody that everybody's like, oh, gosh, now they're going to talk. He designed you to be the person that could be bold enough to speak things that are honest, but in a way that are good. Okay? You see kind of some of the difference that exists here. He's not just trying to rip you apart. He's trying to actually do something whole. But the issue is, whenever we're allowing God to start to speak and try to say things that we would receive, it's difficult whenever Jesus starts calling something bad that I've called good. There's things in our lives that for the longest time we might have looked at and we've said, but this is good. It's great that I am capable of working 100 hours a week, but it's not good that you don't have any relationships in your life. It's not good that nobody knows you. It's not good that when it comes down to it, you would flat out say, I'm just isolated. Is that really the best? Or is it possible that we've taken something that's good and allowed it to be a weed that's just so difficult to discern what's me, what's this other thing that's existed? What is this? And for a lot of us, we have some of those things that continually grow up and continually make us something that we shouldn't be. But there's a fourth type of soil that exists. Matthew 13:23, Jesus talks about this. It says, the seed that fell on good soil represents those who truly hear and understand God's word and produce a harvest of 30, 60, or even 100 times as much as had been planted. What's really unique is that when Jesus talks about all four types of soil, he talks about them all in a way where we see something wrong in the first soil, the second soil, and the third one. And the fourth one, he just says it's good soil. He just says, oh, yeah, that soil was good because it didn't have any birds that were coming to take up any of the seed, didn't have any rocks in it, didn't have any weeds in it. And if you're like me, there's a question that I have when I get to the end of a parable like this, and what I spend so much time wrestling with and wondering is going, God, What do you mean by this good soil? Because this is a difficult message to be able to look at and hear and go, okay, got it. So the condition of my heart, terrible. Thanks. What do I do now? Okay? I'm just being honest. Because it's hard whenever we hear certain parables like this and we're like, Jesus, so you're just trying to call me out. Tell me that I'm terrible. Tell me that I'm bad. Tell me that I got to work on my trauma. I got to do this. How much work do I have to do in order to be in a spot where I can finally receive from you? Thanks, Jesus. Wow, Freedom Church sounds great. So much pressure. We love it. That's not what he's trying to say here. Because when we're looking at a parable like this, when we're seeing he's talking about things that are not in the soil now, what it gives me the ability to see is how Jesus actually does something in the soil of our hearts. He's not looking and telling you, you need to have it all together. He's not looking at you saying, why is it that you're so unprotected? Why is it that you have all these rocks in your heart? Why is it that you've allowed these weeds to all of a sudden come into it? Can I tell you the reality? If you lived your whole life trying to do the work, trying to manage yourself, trying to take every single class, trying to build every single skill in your life, you would still have so many problems in your heart. What Jesus is showing us is, again, the good news of the kingdom of heaven. The good news being this, and I need you to just receive this for a moment, it's the fact that when we enter into a relationship with Jesus and he comes into our heart, he does some work. It means some areas of your life that were formerly unprotected, he starts to protect in a way that nobody else can, in a way that you might have hoped that relationship could, or your parents could, or that job could. Jesus says exactly what we were singing earlier, that whenever I have a relationship with him, I'm not shaken, meaning that when I start to hear words from him, it starts to shift and change who I am. It means that while there were parts of my life where there were rocks in it, where I had brokenness, I had trauma, Jesus comes in to pick up things that were heavier than I ever could and remove them. It means that whenever there are points in my life where there were weeds and I could not handle for anybody else to touch them, Jesus, such a master physician, such a master healer, is able to step in and remove things in a way that might hurt but allows me to actually grow, so that my life is able to produce something so much greater. Let me tell you specifically what this looks like. It means that whenever he starts saying things to you, telling you that he designed you from before you were born, that he thought about you, that he knows you, that he didn't mess up when he made you, that's not something that you hear and the devil comes and say, yeah, but remember that thing? No. It means that I hear that and I hold on to that and I say, that's right. That's who I am. I'm a son, I'm a daughter, exactly what the word says, that I am more than a conqueror in Jesus. It means that when he starts telling you about the purpose that he put on your life, the fact that you weren't meant to just exist, you weren't meant to just go through the world. It means that whenever he tells you that he put a divine purpose on your life, that exactly what this parable talked about, that there would be a harvest. It would produce something good. It would do something that wouldn't just impact your life so you could just finally get up and feel good about yourself, but you would have so much in your heart that you would actually be able to give to others, that you hold on to that. It doesn't get stolen from you. It's something that you are able to keep. It means that whenever Jesus tells us that he is our provider, I don't look and say, yeah, but you remember when you let me down here? You remember whenever you forgot about me in this spot? You remember when you did? It means that I hold on to a word whether or not I've seen it yet. It means that even if I haven't fully lived in it yet, I'm holding on to the fact of exactly what we live in now and not yet. I live in the fact that I'll get to see some of it now, but I will see the fullness of my God as a provider. It means that whenever he says things, that he is able to do the impossible, that I hold on to the fact that he can. The fact that whenever he says that he is able to heal our bodies, heal every disease, heal our hearts, I don't just say, well, maybe someday I'll receive that. No, I hold on to that, because as I walk with Jesus, he's the divine healer and helper of my heart. That in so many spots we would look at and we'd say, but I got to do this, I got to do that. When you just get close to Jesus, and when you start getting other people in your life, when you start listening to what he says and you start to receive it, this is the work of what he does in your life. He protects it. He takes the rocks out. He takes the thorns out. And he allows something to happen there that would be so good for you and so many other people. So let me ask you, what's the condition of your heart today? This isn't something we hear and we listen and we go, okay, cool, I'm bad, I'm like this. Hear the hope on this. If you can see something in your heart right now that Jesus needs to do, now you know exactly how to pray. You know exactly how to be able to invite Jesus in more. You know exactly what to do to be able to say, Jesus, I know you can do this in my heart. So now I'm inviting you in. I need you to help me with this. I can't do this by myself. I need you because nobody else, no other thing, no other path, no other way is going to do it except you. Because when I receive Jesus, it changes everything. I want you to just close your eyes as we take a moment to pray. I know I say this a bit, but I genuinely mean it. I hope you're not just hearing my words today, but they're hearing the fact that Jesus is here, that Jesus is speaking to you, that he is trying to be able to do something in your heart. He's been speaking to you. He's going to continue speaking to you. He hasn't given up on you. If there's an area of your heart that you're looking at and you're saying, yeah, I've allowed things to be unprotected. I've been in a spot right now where there's some rocks, there's some thorns, and I need Jesus to do something. I'm just going to ask you if you just slip your hand up in the air just so that I know to pray for you. Just so that I know that we're not walking into this alone. And I want you to know, just as much as there's a person seeing this, there's even somebody more important than that that's seeing that, who's been seeing it, who knows the condition of your heart more than anybody. I just want to pray for you, and I feel like in this moment, if you just put your hand on your heart, whether or not you raised your hand or not, we all need Jesus to do something in our hearts. I just want to pray for you right now. Jesus, you are able to do everything that we can't. Your word says you can do exceedingly above, beyond anything we could ask, hope, imagine. God, we invite you into our hearts now. Heal us. Bring hope. God, we give you the parts of our heart that we might have not allowed anybody else in. We might have been saying, but there's too much pain, there's too much, but we can't hold this anymore. God, we invite you in. And right now, would we be able to sense the reality of a real God who's doing something real in our lives? Not just something that would change us and give us some emotional moment, but God, do something deeper than that. Go to the depths of our heart. Do what needs to be done so that we might be able to breathe again. We might be able to live again. We might be able to take this step. And what I want to do, even with your eyes closed, right now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand because this is a moment between you and Jesus. If you've never taken this moment, or maybe you've walked away and you need to come back, and this is a moment where you're saying, I need to fully define the relationship of where I'm at with Jesus. I'm not just somebody who comes to church. I'm not just somebody who hears and sits and goes, I wonder if this might be true. But you need to make a choice right now to say, I need to follow Jesus. I need him as my Savior. I need him as my God. I need him as the one who I will choose to follow. Regardless of where you're at, regardless if you prayed this prayer, I want everyone in the room to pray this prayer with me. This is our response. This is us allowing him to do what he needs to do in our hearts, especially if you've never made this decision before. I want you to pray these words after me. Repeat this. Say, Jesus, I'm making a choice right now. I want you as my God, as my Savior. I believe in the message that you shared, that you died, you came back to life, and I get to have a relationship with you now. I'm making the choice to follow you, not just for this moment, but forever. I give you my heart. Do the work you need to do. I trust you. Amen.